treatment because of someone's race, national origin, sex, gender, disability, religion. In other words, we should all be neutral in how we treat people. Now, people are all different, but we want to be treated fairly. I always tell supervisors that when you have, if you look at it like a stern parent, it's fair. Employees do not mind rules as long as they're consistently applied. That's it in a nutshell. They like boundaries. People want to know what the rules are. What they don't want is to be treated differently. And you and I both know that everybody here knows everything. They all know. There are no secrets in the workplace. If somebody else gets away with something, the rest of the group knows it. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to do that. It's a lot easier when you're busy and tired. You know, oh well, it'll work out. And it doesn't. So it's very important that we do that. I mean, I did a training for the county years ago, and one of the big issues was one of the department could have casual Friday, and the other one couldn't. Now, you wouldn't think that would be a big deal. Giant deal. Giant. Because people keep score. They keep score. One of the areas of discrimination that we really always recommend, if you have an issue with it, is the disability stuff. It's very tricky. One of the things I see happening now is that because of these HIPAA laws and medical privacy laws, I can remember when it used to be common practice if someone had a heart attack or, heaven forbid, or cancer or whatever it was, a lot of the employees would want to, get together and have a thank you note, or not thank you, but get well, and they would get very involved with it. And of course now, we live in a different world. It's like, we're not supposed to be discussing other people's medical conditions. So that gets kind of tricky. I had a refinery where they had an employee that went out on for cancer treatment, and he gets treatment, and he comes back, and he's supposed to be operating the board. They watch they call them board operators, and I don't know where his mind was, but all of a sudden the temperatures spiked up to the sky. He did not blow the plant up, but he could have. And that kind of situation is zero tolerance. So they fired him. So he goes to the EEOC and files a lawsuit saying that he's been terminated because he had cancer. He's got a disability. And there's no question, cancer is considered a disability. Well, the supervisor had no idea why he went out. The supervisor that terminated him, he didn't get involved with his medical condition. HR handled his paperwork, but the supervisor didn't get into the middle of it. So he couldn't have made that decision because he didn't even know. So I share that just to give you an understanding as to why we don't need to get involved with all of that. Yes?
That's an interesting topic because some of us work in the field where a fitness for duty can be detrimental to the individual job performance. What aspect, I know under civil service we have certain things that can apply to that, but what's your recommendation on that?
And that's a great question. You are civil service, so that's going to be a separate situation, but I think that's a great topic. In fact, I was just talking about this yesterday because at the shipyard, it's a very physical job. And under disability law, let me give you just a little background. We used to not really have detailed job descriptions. What do we do now? Because of the disability laws. Disability laws say that you cannot be discriminated against for your disability as long as you can perform the essential functions of the job with or without accommodation. Now, what does that mean? First of all, that means that you got to be able to do your job. So that's why we list requirements, fitness for duty. If I'm in an office sitting down, I don't need to be able to lift 25 pounds or run over an obstacle course. That's not an essential function of my job. If I put that in a job description because I want to keep out certain people, it can be struck down. Because people at a desk, under most circumstances, don't need to be able to run and lift. Obviously, officers do. There used to be, years ago, a restriction on height for officers, and of course that was struck down because that didn't really fit with a fit for duty requirement. But that is why we do it, and that is why we have these requirements, because it is a part of the job that you have to be able to meet those. Now, with or without accommodation, that gets kind of sticky, and a lot of times employers will screw up on that part of it, because the law requires you to at least look at an accommodation. Doesn't mean you have to. You have to at least look at it. For example, I've got a chemical plant where they have operators, and they also have the big trucks come in and they have to unload. That's part of their job. Well, they don't like that part. And when they unload, they have to wear a safety harness. So one of the individuals, he'd been there, employee, been there for a while, he gained a bunch of weight, and he no longer was within the safety range of the capacity for the harness. Okay? So you don't want to reward, in other words, he gets to get out of that part of the job because that's going to create resentment with everyone else because they're having to. On the other hand, OSHA says I got to have a safe environment here. I can't be putting people in safety equipment that they don't, it doesn't work for them. So we had to look at an accommodation, which is, can we find another safety harness that will support his weight? And we see the same thing with ladders, when people get really heavy, and that sort of thing. Did that kind of answer it or not? No?
We could talk about that all day long, so yes.
Well, the other thing about fitness for duty, and it does come up with a new thing we're having is prescription drugs is another new area. And I don't want to spend all the time talking about that, but it's an ever-changing, evolving situation. And in the past, we all know about drug testing, but that tests for illegal drugs, not prescription drugs. Certain industries, it's an issue. If I'm in an office setting, it's none of my beeswax who's on Xanax, okay? Maybe they need to be on Xanax. But if I'm operating machinery, then it's a different issue. So, and obviously if you're an officer and you're running around and, it's another issue. But these are areas that we have to fine tune. There's a recent case the EEOC took on, you may have read about it, which had to do with weight. Always before, weight has never been considered what we call a protected status, meaning religion, sex, gender, disability. Well, weight, I predicted this for years. I've been predicting this is going to happen because it's an issue that is affecting people. Now, under the Disability Act, they amended it, and it now includes what's considered morbidly obese. That does not mean, the Christmas pounds you gain. That's morbidly obese. The case that's going up right now is a business in Houston. They had an individual who had been there. I think he was 475. I mean, we're talking about very, very big. And he parked in the parking lot, and it took him a while to get to the building. Of course, he wasn't getting paid for that. He hadn't clocked in there. And he had a desk job. And his boss they really screwed it up because, I think that what they were probably thinking is he's going to affect our insurance. But they set him down and they said, we're going to let you go. You take too long to walk across the parking lot. Well, guess what? They're going to lose that because it's walking across the parking lot has nothing to do with his job at his desk. Now, if you're a police officer, that's a different matter. But that's what we're seeing, yes.
But what if they hired me 120 pounds and I'm doing my job and I'm on the job for 3 or 4 years and then I go to 225 or 300. Now it's affecting what I started, when they hired me.
Right.
So, take the case of the obese. Did they hire him when he was huge? Or did he get huge during the course of the job?
He gained. I think he was a large guy to begin with, but he had gained. He had gained a bunch of weight. We see this. This is an issue. It makes a difference on what you do. The chemical plants, the refineries, they all have a safety issue. Okay, there's a safety issue. For example, recently, y'all may have heard there was a woman that they wouldn't let board the airplane because of her weight. The response back from the plane or the airline was that she had trouble, she couldn't get on. And so their issue is, well, that if she can't get on, what about getting off? It could affect the rest of the passengers if she couldn't get off and there was an emergency. So anytime we have a safety issue, it makes a difference. If it's not a safety issue, it's a performance issue, and that's got nothing to do with weight or anything else. It's simply a performance issue. If you can't perform, then you have an issue. Some of the companies I've seen that have had employees that have been there for a while and they gained a bunch of weight, particular one with the safety harness, they couldn't find a harness that handled his weight, wasn't physically out there, but they actually gave him time to lose. So, they worked with him. I had somebody yesterday ask me about boots. And what they do, apparently, they have some of their welding, they don't have to wear boots, but some of the welding, they're around hazardous chemicals, and they have to wear boots. Of course, nobody wants to do that part of the job. And they had a fellow that had really, really large feet. I can't remember now what the size was. I want to say 18, but that might not be right. But it was a big foot. And of course, that's not considered a disability, having big feet. At least it's not right now. Maybe. But I said, guys, get on the internet and see if you can find what it costs. Now, if you have to pay $10,000 to have a mold to make a boot, then that's not reasonable. But otherwise, go see if you can find one. So, but it's very interesting. It's a very interesting area. If you have an issue as a supervisor involving anything like that, I really strongly urge you to get some help because it can be a little tricky. Questions? Yes, right.
In an academic setting, we have a lot of training that we have to deal with. And cultural diversity, race, sex, all that comes up in our training. When the instructor says right up front, you're going to be offended in my training, it's part of what the training is, talking about race, talking about that sort of thing. And he sets that, or she sets that tone up front. Can one of the students be legally offended by the conversations or the talk that goes on in that academic setting?
And that's another good question. I hate it when lawyers say it depends, but and that example where we see that is the Alzheimer's units. Alzheimer's units, unfortunately, a lot of people with Alzheimer's will get very nasty in terms of their comments. I mean, we're talking about vicious racial comments, sexual comments, and they are told that's part of their job, that they're gonna have to, deal with that. You know, that's just, they don't know what they're saying and deal with it. As far as training goes, you know, setting aside the legal part of it, I don't know how effective training that is, because you don't want to immediately put the thought in somebody's brain, they're going to be offended. That's like setting you up to already be offended. And I don't know why you would say that. There's a way to talk about cultural differences without being offensive. Now, if somebody is offended, then the way that works is the law considers this to be a